The NWSL quarterfinals delivered so much chaos that we are now wondering if Shield winning coaches are even that good. Welcome to this week's edition of The Late Sub. I am your host, Claire Watkins. It is Wednesday, November 12th, and we're going to be talking about what we got right and what we got wrong about the NWSL quarterfinals that absolutely delivered the magic and what that means for the four teams who are going to be competing for a shot in that championship in San Jose next week. There's so much to dig into. Let's just start. Let's go. Let's get into it. I'm excited. So the NWSL quarterfinal round took place last weekend, and we prayed for chaos, and we got more than a little bit of it. It was a really nice slate of games, a good showing of what makes the NWSL so great, which is that you can never get too comfortable coming out of the regular season. And if we're going to be talking about what comes next, we got to talk about what happened and some of the energy coming out of those games. So what I think I'm going to do today, this week, I'm going to put me on the hot seat a little bit because playoffs are stressful. If the fans are going through it, if coaches and players are going through it, I got to go through it too. And let's talk about what I got right and what I got wrong when previewing the NWSL quarterfinals and how that informs what we're going to be seeing this weekend and honestly next, because the big show is not that far away. This season is going to wrap up real quick, and we want to give it all of the attention that it deserves. So let's start with the big content, big analysis win for anybody who sort of saw the signs, which is that Gotham did come in and shock Kansas City to knock them out of the playoffs in the first round. And in retrospect, with every day that passes since this happened, you go, was that shock? Was it that shocking? It seemed like the environment was like just right for it to happen. You know, if so many people said that it could happen, is it that wild? I think yes, still. It was pretty shocking to watch it play out. You get to the end of regulation and you go, oh my gosh, Gotham's going to do this. Kansas City equalizes. You get to the end of extra time. You go, oh, it's going to penalties. And then Gotham does it again. It was a pretty incredible result from Gotham walking into Kansas City and knocking out the winningest team in league history. But as I said, there's a reason why I wasn't the only person to kind of peg this as a possibility. As we saw on Sunday, the Current were without 2024 MVP, probably 2025 MVP Temwa Chawinga, as we expected, because she's working with that adductor strain. The surprise was that forward Michelle Cooper was also out. That was a bad surprise if you're a Kansas City fan. No one was really expecting that. It looks like she got hurt in their regular season finale against San Diego. Bia was playing hurt. She gutted out 114 minutes on a bad MCL, and the team couldn't really adjust to the changes in form or in availability that they were dealing with, which some of that is a little bit of bad luck. Some of that they maybe weren't controlling the controllables. And what specifically happened is Gotham came in with a very confident, high defensive line, trusting that the offside trap and their ability to control space between the center backs and excellent defensive midfielder Jalen Howell would pin the Current back into their own half and allow Gotham's attacking players to kind of needle that Kansas City back line until something worked. If the Current are at full strength, I don't think this works as well. Chawinga and Cooper and Dabinia, who did her very best, are all very good at putting significant pressure on a back line, playing in that way. Even without the ball, they can force the back line into mistakes. They make the back line have to respect the deep runs a little bit more, respect pace a little bit more. And I think if they had had those front foot defensive presences from their front line, then Gotham would have been way less comfortable recycling possession without making mistakes. But Kansas City didn't have that presence, and those players are very, very difficult to replace. Poor Dabinia was stuck pressing the back line alone for a lot of the first half, and those conditions were perfect for Emily Sonnet to, frankly, have her best game of the season in that Gotham back line. The Current couldn't make her uncomfortable for pace. Sonnet is not the fastest defender in the world, as we know, but she was able to make that positioning changes, get into those foot races, and influence play enough that she wasn't getting completely burnt. She's such a monster at snuffing out dangerous situations, making herself really big in space. This is not the first playoff appearance that she's made where it feels like she's just made herself so big in that back line. And her passes in when they did recycle possessions were dimes to set off the Gotham attack. I mean, we talk about the Jaden Shaw opening goal. She had a fantastic game. She had a goal and an assist. Gotham definitely got their money's worth there. She's doing so well with them. Really nice to see her on the upswing again. And that was that kind of perfect ball from Emily Sonnet from the back line. I think that was exactly how Gotham wanted to play this game. And Katie Stingle earns the game winner in extra time. Now, Gotham scoring 2 goals on the Kansas City defense, as good as the Kansas City defense is, doesn't like bother me. I don't go like that's why they lost the game. The first one was a bit of that 2-person skill, while the defense had been under pressure in that first half because, again, of that sort of the way that the flow of play was happening with Gotham with a lion's share of possession, kind of pinning Kansas City back. And the last one was simply like, you got to turn to the universe, turn to fate, turn to soccer god and say, not our day. But I also think head coach Vlatko Andonovski set his team up very conservatively for what they were missing. I think that approach works if you do have Temwa Chawinga and if you do have Michelle Cooper. I think instead what it turned into was basically all 11 players sitting off the ball in the hopes that they could poke through that Gotham high line, run half the field and score some incredible either 2-touch or individual goal. And they almost did that. Nichelle Prince had a chance to open this up in the first half, and it just didn't happen for her. I wish he would have trusted his midfield more to contest possession and push that Gotham defense back through holding the ball in the midfield rather than letting the Bats dictate play the way they were able to dictate it. If you don't have that press, you have to tell your excellent midfield of Claire Hutton and Lola Bonta, these very, very good players, to hold the ball, move the ball, force Gotham to back up. That stretches the game for them because they played most of the game in the half field. So it is freaky player availability that got us here, and it takes that for a team like Kansas City to lose this game. But I also think Andonovski got it wrong in a knockout playoff game. I think he has a reputation, a recent reputation, I should say, for not always getting it quite right, maybe being a little bit too conservative when he's worried about different holes in his starting 11. But in the wake of this upset, which is significant on its own, I want to hit on the hot topic of conversation this week, which is with all of that criticism, is Vlatko Andonovski still a worthy winner of Coach of the Year? He is amongst the 3 finalists for the 2025 award alongside Spirit manager Adrian Gonzalez and Louisville head coach Bev Yanez. I'm not going to mince words, going to put it plainly. I think Vlatko flopped in this game by not empowering his players to play front-footed soccer in the face of as many injuries as they were dealing with. I think Kansas City still should have won this game despite missing those players. Not a new problem with Andonovski. Certainly, again, in this most recent, I guess, like decade, 5, 6, 7 years of his career, simply something that Kansas City maybe just has to accept if he's your guy. But I'm also annoyed that this regular season award has voting open as the playoffs continue to go on. I think that everyone should have put their votes in before that quarterfinal was played. It is a regular season award. I don't like that people have, good or bad, that image of that quarterfinal in their heads. I don't think if that award had closed before the quarterfinal, anyone would be saying, oh, well, Vlatko's a choker. It's irrelevant. That is very frustrating to me. And I think that is a mistake in the timing for the NWSL as a league. I understand that there's not a lot of time in between, but there has to be some give and go. I just don't think that if we're going to be making these decisions, these very important end of season award decisions, that should be in the front of mind. And I also think, Gotham going into Kansas City and winning is what you love about the NWSL playoffs, but it can't diminish what exactly Kansas City achieved during the regular season, which was a historically winning year. And as much as Temwa Chawinga is my MVP, number 1 on my MVP list for this year, they missed her very much on Sunday on both sides of the ball. It really underlined just how important she is to that team. As much as I have Yanez right behind Vlatko for very different but equally compelling story, that's the beauty of tiered voting, right? You're not just putting one name in there. We got to accept the dichotomy of the guy who stomped all over the NWSL for months and then tripped, a quarter mile from the finish line. And my final pitch here is if Chawinga, 2024 MVP, is your constant, what Andonovski achieved with the Kansas City defense from last year to this year was so efficient and effective and so clearly by his design, that's what he's best at, that I just don't believe that this roster, similar to last year's, is what just suddenly carried the day to a 21-point regular season win. So Vlatko's still number 1 for me, but I think that that's the whole picture and kind of in very stark terms of the positives and the negatives of that being your guy, plus a little bit of bad luck and some great game planning and performances from Gotham. So that was the big one. But let's talk about the other 3 quarterfinals here, what we got right and what we got wrong. I got right Kind of figured Washington needed everything they had to send Louisville home. Man, Washington is one of the most exciting teams in the NWSL, and sometimes they really bum me out. The injuries are killing them. They're killing me. They lost 2 more players mid-game in this quarterfinal in Gabby Carl and Tierra McCowan. Hopefully they're okay. Unclear exactly how severe those injuries were. Trinity Rodman is slowly coming back for MCL sprain. They're just not firing on all cylinders, and it's hard to watch a team be so close to greatness without having the tools to achieve it. It's tough to watch sometimes. And Louisville played the game right in front of them. Defend for your lives, take your chances, as that ended up being kind of that stoppage time equalizer to send it into extra time. Work your way into the game until the belief is there. Hope the ball bounces your way. It did once when that first goal got called off by VAR. It didn't happen in the penalties. They executed it, Louisville did, all the way to that final mode of the game plan, holding on well until the penalty shootout, but then you could see the belief just leave their body language once that first miss happened. And Aubrey Kingsbury's experience in penalty shootouts won out in the end. You saw kind of that idea that experience wins championships. I think you really saw that for Washington. The Spirit are awesome. They're really good in the playoffs. But this game was a good indicator of just how much trouble they've had putting games away with the lack of availability. I think extra time was not good for them. I think that it really compounded some of the availability issues that they had. I think it's very good news for them that they made it through the quarterfinal without, I don't actually think that Rodman was coming into this game ever. I think maybe if they had been like losing by a goal, but I don't know. I think that she was on the bench to make everyone think about her being on the bench and what that might mean. But I don't think she was going into that game. I think that it would have been way too risky for a player who is way too important to both this club and for country. But I also think that like it's great that they got through the quarterfinal without having to play her. I think every single week they get towards getting her back is very good. We did see some returns, right? We saw Give Monday out there, Kawasi, we saw Corey Bethune, we saw Lacey Santos. Like they did get a lot of those players back after that finale in the regular season. But you just, again, you see that push-pull of what they can do and who they can be. I honestly, the main thing that went into my head watching this game was how much it reminded me of last year's championship game, where you're watching a player like Kawasi and you're going, this is the best player on the pitch. This is the difference maker. She's doing so much. But with more and more time and the way that they struggled to punch it in, and then, Gift Monday gets the opening goal, and then they concede, and then in extra time, they start losing more players, having to sub more players. Again, reminded of the futility of watching Rodman try to battle through that championship game last year, not at 100%. I'm just getting real deja vu, both in huge positives and some struggles for Washington. And I worry or wonder if that isn't exactly what this postseason is going to be again. Are they going to make it to the finish line and fall just short just because they don't have the healthy personnel? Very, very interested to see. But shout out to Louisville. I thought that they've been very true to themselves. I think that they have a lot of room to grow. And I also think that they should want, I think, to be a little bit less route one, a little bit less reactive. But I think you just have to attest to how well that's worked for them. But yeah, really, really big fighting through adversity for Washington, but you just always wonder how long that can continue. Now moving on to what I got wrong. Seattle Reign got this wrong. Their 5 back did not have the wherewithal to hold off the Orlando Pride. Yes, Orlando. 1 game away from returning to the championship, reigning champions, and the team in the postseason with perhaps the biggest chips on their shoulders. It was interesting kind of watching Orlando's postgame after this quarterfinal, not only watching, but sort of reading through the transcripts. Obviously, there's been some back and forth on social media this week. Some of it's very understandable. The no end-of-year award nominations for an Orlando team feels like a huge oversight. They're the only playoff team to not receive any end-of-year individual award nominations, but they came in with a tried-and-true playoff approach, and it paid off against a Seattle team that literally cannot chase games. They're not set up to be there. The Pride forced the issue early, running very, very hard to drag the Reign into a high transition game in the first 25 minutes, which we always know takes a ton of energy, but can really pay off. They got what they needed. They got that opening goal by Haley McCutcheon, came in early in that turn and bird period. They hold on to the lead for dear lives against a Reign team that's not really set up to chase games. Marta kills it basically on her own late in the game just because she likes the ball at her feet rather than hoofing it, she said. Ethical footballer through and through. And the Pride get the complete game and the huge emotional breakthrough that they've been looking for. And they seem a little pissed off. I like it. They feel disrespected. They don't feel like we've been paying enough attention. I think that 7-game winless streak and the Bandit injury kind of compounding on top of that raised a lot of questions about Orlando's chances, like rightfully so. I think we can sit here and say that, but I also understand where they're coming from. of being like, well, look at how we're playing now. And I thought that game was probably Orlando's like best game of the whole season. Certainly their best game without Banda of the whole season. Some of that defensive tenacity was back. Some of that midfield holding was back. The fact that they were able to come in with that clarity of purpose in the beginning of the game, hold on to the lead, and then ice it at the end with that's just some savvy experience. And again, some back and forth on social media. It's not just an idea of star power for them. I think it is just like championship DNA at this point, where you look at a player like Marta or Emily Sams or Ali Watt or Carson Pickett. It's a lot of championship experience. It's an understanding what's necessary of like, you don't have to do everything. You just have to win the game in front of you. And at this point in the year, execution is absolutely everything. I'm really, really excited for this Orlando Gotham semifinal because these two teams just played their best games of the season. So what do you do from there? Are we going to see some of this revert? Are we going to see more mistakes? Are we going to see that more of that roller coaster that we saw over the regular season? Are we seeing two teams that are finally locked in and it's more of this chess match between Juan Carlos Amoros and Seb Hines? This is a good one. And I know it feels like, number 8 seed breaking through, but no, this has the ability to be one of the more elite playoff games of this entire postseason, but it is dependent on those two versions of those two teams that we saw in the quarterfinals showing up. And again, I kind of like that Orlando's coming in angry. Marta feeds on it. Mad Marta madness levels. This is the kind of thing that they use to make it all the way to the final. I find them, again, the chip on Orlando's shoulder to be really interesting and sort of refreshing in a way where it's like, yeah, why not Orlando? Why can't they? And I'm curious if it can carry them to championship weekend and not to steal Jaden Shaw's pull quote, but I don't think the Pride are the underdogs this weekend. I actually think that if I'm looking at that, I maybe expect the Pride to be the team to make it all the way to the championship. And then the final thing that I think I got right, and we'll see if it stays right. This one is, we'll see what happens this weekend, is Portland's road to a 4th championship is right in front of them. This could obviously change now that they have to go on the road. They have that huge boost when they play at home like they did in their quarterfinal. But I'm hoping some people are starting to see the vision a little bit. Portland survived San Diego 1-0 in extra time at home, having squandered a few chances to put it away in regulation. It was a nice game. I fear that it didn't maybe pop as much as the other 3 just because there was maybe just some quarterfinal fatigue by the time we got to the last game of the weekend. But I think it was a nice back and forth game. But I do think Portland was mostly in control. I think there were a couple calls that went their way, but that midfield's really clicking. I was not surprised at all that Raylan Turner was the player to get the breakthrough. She's been increasingly good for them in the attack, on the attacking end. And they beat a good San Diego side. They'll be playing a very injured Washington Spirit coming off of their own very long game in the semifinal. And Kansas City is gone, right? On the other side of the bracket. There's something there to Portland being a surprised beneficiary of sort of how these playoffs are going. And I would say I'm most impressed by the Thorns pitching a shutout in their quarterfinal than anything else. The attack is working. They're missing a lot of attacking firepower. I mean, we talk about, absences or injuries. There's a little bit of recency bias there, right? Where we look at Kansas City and we go, oh, they just lost these players. But Portland has been working at a deficit all season. They lost some incredible attacking firepower to injury at the beginning of the year. And obviously they don't have Sophia Wilson. I am very impressed by how that part of the team has reshaped itself to the point where we almost expect it. Olivia Moultrie, very good again in this game. Sam Coffey, justice for Sam Coffey. Goodness gracious. She better make best 11 because her not being on the Defender of the Year shortlist is a crime. But the question was always more about their defense. And I want to shout out specifically goalkeeper Mackenzie Arnold, who I have not always thought was super consistent this season. She had her ups and downs, and I thought she was incredible against San Diego. I thought that she made herself very big. I thought she came off her line at the right times. I don't think she was ever challenged with, unsavable because, if it's unsavable, it's unsavable, but she was in the right places at the right times. I thought she did a good job communicating with her back line. It looks like that team again, that Portland team, if they can show up against Washington and not let Washington score first, there is something there. Now, Washington's going to give it all they got. I just think that they're going to try to put as much pressure on that back line as they can to make them leaky again. Portland still had a tendency to give up some not great goals, even at the end of the regular season. But man, if that defensive group, that back 4 and Arnold can lock in, I just think that there is a calm. I think that this is like how lucky for Portland, or maybe, obviously by design, to go from a player like Christine Sinclair to a player like Sam Coffey. They are experienced. They are calm. They are ready for this moment. Again, don't know what happens when they have to go on the road, but I feel like the pieces are there, and I feel like the bracket is opening up for them. So put myself on the line here. What happens this weekend, right? What do we think? Who's going to play for a championship? And this is where I go back to last week. I was like, is it wild to say that Orlando's a little less sharp than they were last year? Is it wild to say that Gotham could go in and beat Kansas City? Is it boring if I say right now I think we could be getting Orlando versus Washington round 2? Or is it even shocking that I think we could get Gotham versus Portland? I think this top 4, people have been noting that these 4 teams are the last 4 NWSL champions. These are good teams. And it's weird to me, and there's a whole other podcast to talk about why it took this long for some of these teams to lock in and what that means about the regular season. But I don't know if we know exactly who's coming out here. So I'm going to do it. I'm not always super attached to these previews, but let's take one upset off the board and put another one on. I think Orlando is going to beat Gotham at home. And I think Portland could go right in there to Washington and take advantage of a team that's hurting. So Orlando versus Portland, who says no? Fascinated to see what could happen, though. All 4 of these teams are very good and could all go all the way to the end. Cannot wait to watch it. The Late Sub is part of the Just Women Sports Network. This show is written by Claire Watkins and produced and edited by Parker Fenton. To get more of your favorite women's sports content, subscribe to the Just Women Sports newsletter and follow Just Women Sports across all your favorite channels.